Hey, Will Brink here, brinkzone.com. Today I want to cover Creapure, also known as German creatine, and why I have recommended it all these decades, and why when I decided to do my own thing and offer a product, I decided, of course, to use Creapure in my product. To do that, we got to go back in time. I don't think many people realize today that the person that first exposed the differences between creatines was me, to toot my own horn. We got to go back to about 93, 94. At that time, it even happens today, but at that time especially, creatine, of course, was becoming very popular, and basically everybody just thought creatine was creatine, and that was pretty much the attitude towards creatine, monohydrate, of course. At that time, there were a fairly large number of manufacturers. There was a U.S. manufacturer, Fansteel. There was a handful of Chinese manufacturers. There was German creatine. There was a few in Europe, Italian or so. And what I did was I was able to take a bunch of creatine products off the shelf. I got them tested and published those results in Muscle Mag International, which was the first time that somebody had really gone down in detail the differences in creatine quality. And the tests were very conclusive that German creatine, which at the time was just called German creatine, or actually came from a company they were called SKW at the time. They later had to change their name to Alzchem and trademarked the name Creapure, but at that time that didn't exist, so we just called it German creatine. So the tests were very conclusive, and I will link below this video to the article that will take you to that article, the follow-up article, and some more recent testing, so don't worry about it in this video. So the tests were conclusive that German creatine was by far of the highest quality, highest purity. There were a handful of chemicals that were found in other creatines. Of course, the Chinese creatines at the time were by far the worst. As time has gone on, again, I don't know if people realize, however, there is now really only two places in the world you can get creatine, and that is China and Germany. The rest of them are basically all gone, and that was mostly due to, well, the Chinese doing what they do well, which was dumping on the market. Knocked pretty much everybody out of the business, but the Germans, who were big enough to sort of weather that storm and make a niche for themselves as maybe offering a higher quality or higher purity of creatine, and there you go. So I was the first to expose that and get into that, and now you'll see a lot of other videos and people talking about the differences and all that, some of which are accurate, some of which are not. But so that's where we start. A few years after that, I had some additional products tested, some additional types of creatine. This is when also now competitive types of creatine, alternatives to creatine monohydrate were coming out, like liquid, which is garbage, and some others that came out. And so I had some of those tested along with another small batch of creatine monohydrate, pretty much the same result. Now the interesting thing was that the first article actually caused so much heat for Muscle Mag International at the time, they wouldn't take the second one. Their advertisers and stuff. And this again was the magazine business was starting to change now towards more advertising based, keeping advertisers happy, which prior to that, however, people have to understand that magazines were really, and this is when they were good, to be honest with you, were subscription based publications. That is, their focus was keeping their subscribers happy with good content, not their advertisers. That was when things started to switch around those mid-90s and stuff. So Muscle Mag would not take the second article. The second one ended up getting published online. Oh, there's somebody trying to contact me. So the second one got published online. You can also see that at the article linked. And more recently, a group in Italy took 30 products, I think it was about 32 products off the shelves, tested them and found about 50% of them, a whopping 50% of them, exceeded organic contaminants by quite a bit. I honestly would like to see even some more testing, some modern testing. I may try to do that again someday, but that's not really my thing anymore. I kind of made my point, frankly. Now, let me be clear, that is not to say that all Chinese creatine is subpar. Some Chinese creatine is perfectly good quality. The issue, however, is the company that's selling it or offering it, do they test it regularly? If they do and you trust the company, again, there's more discussion about that in the article, then all good. It's not like you have to always use Creapure. I personally tend to always default to it because, frankly, it's a known entity. It has been consistently high quality for decades. They really were always about that, and so that's where I'm going to default. And so when it came time for me to make a product, it was an obvious, choice. I don't know if you can see that, but anything with Creapure, almost I'm going to say pretty much every company selling Creapure is going to have that little logo, that little trademark logo, so you'll know. People say, well, how do I know if I'm getting Creapure? That's basically it. It's that simple. You can look it online. You can search for Creapure if you're not using AlphaJoe or somebody else's. There's a number of companies that were offering Creapure. And again, not the end of the world if you're not using Creapure, but I personally, if I wasn't using Creapure, I'm only going to use a company that I trust to test the hell out of that creatine or anything they do. NutraBio is such a company. There's a few others, but again, if I don't know them personally and who owns them and how they run and all that, I'm just not going to recommend them. NutraBio is such a company. They actually happen to make AlphaJoe because Mark Glazier is such a fanatic about his testing that when I went to his shop, as they say, saw how anal he is about it and all that, how serious he is about it. He doesn't just talk about it. Lots of companies talk about how they test everything, and honestly, again, rarely the truth. I really wanted him to make the product for me, and he's not a contract manufacturer. Had to twist some arms and try everything I could to, I was going to guilt him into it, but whatever, I leaned on our friendship and other things to get him to do it, and he's been making AlphaJoe for me ever since. So that too is linked if you're interested in that. So that is why I have recommended Creapure all these years. I was the guy who exposed basically there were differences in quality of creatine. Actually, back in the day, sorry, I got a frog. Gotta use some more AlphaJoe, hold on. Okay, back. Actually, back in the day, funny story. I was actually at an industry event, GNC conference, and after I published that article, a guy who basically made all his money undercutting everybody and selling a bulk creatine, this Chinese run, like the lowest, crappiest creatine he could find, was drunk and took a swing at me because he said I cost him a lot of money, and he cursed at me. I forgot his name. He was a little fat guy. He was a little brown guy, black curly hair, but he was pretty well known at the time, and he was not a real respected guy, but he was one of those guys that didn't give a shit. I don't know what happened to him, but he was pretty mad at me. So there's a little side silly story. So recommendation: I would always default to Creapure. Given the choice personally, you're going to pay a little more. It costs actually considerably more than the Chinese stuff, unless if you're satisfied or comfortable with a company that you use, feel that they are, really do their due diligence on the testing, then I wouldn't stress about it too much. So that's all I have to say for today. Subscribe, please. Like this vid, the usual stuff, and I'll see you guys on the Brink Zone.